Hello, welcome to the Roundtable. We bring you expert analysis on major global issues and current affairs. Around this time every year, we are frequently tempted to go out and hit the road for spring trips. It is forecasted that this spring, flower blossoms and blooms will begin about 10 days earlier than usual. So it would be better to plan ahead if you do not want to miss the blossom of spring. Today, we are joined by Professor Jung Gu-yeon. Welcome to the program, Professor Jung.
Thank you for having me today.
We are also joined by Professor Lee Kyung-seok. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Let us tell you about the presidential election held in Russia recently. President Vladimir Putin won it for the fifth term, confirming his nickname, the new modern-day tsar. As a result, he'll have served as the president of Russia for 30 years by 2030, becoming the longest-serving leader in modern Russian history. With constitutional changes in 2020, Putin is eligible to run for another 6-year term in 2030. This is why some observers believe he may intend to stay in power for life. Professor Lee, having watched the presidential election, what's the major observation you would make?
So I would like to describe the result as no alarms and no surprise.
No surprise.
So everybody knows that Russia, it's not a full democracy, it's autocracy and fully controlled by Putin. So this kind of full control by Putin he can intentionally make a favorable political environment for his re-elections. So one of the important points is there was no credible opposition politicians who ran the elections. So everybody knows that Navalny, once his political rival, was dead in a prison. And also several opposition politicians were dead or assassinated or went to prison. So without any rivalries and a full control by Putin, so he can intentionally make a good political conditions to pave a good way for his elections. So in that point, I would say there was no surprise.
No surprise. Many of the political leaders in the world aiming at the top position in the government would be very envious of Putin if elections are that easy for them, right?
So, and adding to your point,
Right.
I think it's really possible and likely that he will maintain his political tenure for his entire life. So he can actually run the next presidential election as a presidential candidate. But I think he have to handle a couple of issues for extending his political tenures. The first of all is definitely winning the Ukraine war.
Right.
And also there's an economic downturn caused by economic sanctions. So right now in the middle of the war period, so the publics are likely to rally around the flag, but after the war, the economic, the negative condition will definitely affect public's approval ratings. So definitely have to handle these domestic issues to maintain his power.
I see. There are lots of reasons to make us believe that Putin may lose his power right now. To name a few, there is the fatigue about the Ukraine war, as Professor Lee mentioned, which has entered its third year, and also the mounting criticism against his long authoritarian grip on the nation. But in the latest election, more than 80% of Russian voters cast their ballots for him. So, Professor Jung, what accounts for his popularity, such a high approval rating in the election?
Well, we are in the democracy, so it might be ironic to see that some president kind of enjoy 80 or 90% of approval rating, and at the same time voter turnout. But when you're looking at Russian politics and history of Russian politics, they always enjoy more than 70% of voter turnout, 70%. As well as approval rating. And especially when it comes to Putin, now it is in the middle of the Ukraine war, which sent a nationalist sentiment and signals to their populations. And actually Russian population's priority is on national security. And every time there was a Ukraine war, the approval rating for Putin has been skyrocketed, even in 2014 and 2016. So that's kind of occurring every time. At the same time, when you're looking at this Russian election this year, it was pretty interesting to see that there was internet voting. And from the last time they introduced this mobile voting, but at the same time this time they introduced internet voting to mobilize their population to vote more rather than the last year. And also they mobilized this government-sponsored institution like universities or kind of public institutions. They've targeted those populations to vote more. So there are a number of tactics at the same time. And the last but not least, Russians, even though they are very patriotic, but at the same time they are apathetic to politics. They have never witnessed this power transition to another political party. So they never actually experience what it means like a kind of political competition. So they just voting for Putin. That's kind of way of their kind of tradition, I think.
So all stars are aligned for Vladimir Putin to get elected.
Right.
Voting was also held in the parts of Ukraine that have been annexed by Russia. Ahead of the presidential election, Putin said in an interview with a state broadcaster that Russia is ready to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine if its sovereignty is threatened. By winning the election and another term, Putin has secured a justification for continuing the war in Ukraine, according to his supporters. So, Professor Lee, I think there are two opposite possibilities for Putin administration with regards to the Russia's war with Ukraine. One possibility is that, okay, now I get elected for another 6 years, so I don't have to push the war in Ukraine because I already gather the rally around the flag support effect for my re-election. So I can stop the war now. The other possibility is that, okay, I hold the power for another 6 years, so I can do whatever I want in order to win the war in Ukraine. So I can be even more offensive. What possibility is more likely?
So first of all, from the internal, the domestic perspective, I would say the re-elections, it's really a good sign for Putin to be more aggressive and to keep the war to be advantage to Putin's. Ukraine occupied territory people, they cast their vote for Putin's. So the Western media actually reported the heavily armed soldiers, they knocked the door, each knocked the doors to peoples, and they forced the people to vote. But this is actually a strategy from Putin to Russification to get the legitimacy inside the Ukraine territories. Based on this kind of domestic favorable condition, even in Ukraine occupied territories, I think there's really a driving forces that Putin can be more aggressive in the war of Ukraine. But on the other side, as I mentioned, we have to think about the external perspective. The external perspective, it's right now the military aid from the Western sides to Ukraine. So Putin actually have a really advantage position right now based on the superior manpower, defense industries, and the military support from the strategic partners, for example, Iran or North Korea. But when you think about the Ukraine right now, there's actually the support for Western countries, especially from United States, it's really constrained and decreasing because there's a deadline right now over the US Congress whether they have to support more or increase the military aid package. So in terms of this kind of power imbalance between the Western sides and the authoritarian sides, I would say Putin could have more confidence to be more aggressive, to expand its territory and influence inside the Ukraine territory.
I see. South Korea has tremendous interest in the impact Putin's long-term rule will have on the peace in Northeast Asia. In an interview, President Putin said that North Korea has its own nuclear umbrella. This sounds as if he recognizes North Korea as a nuclear state. With his remarks, Putin may seem to support the North's illicit nuclear development. So, Professor Jung, what can we make of these remarks by President Putin regarding nuclear North Korea?
I think his statement can be analyzed in two kind of perspectives. First, by saying that North Korea is already a nuclear state, he's trying to say that Russia is not involved in transferring technology when it comes to nuclear side. Of course, it seems like they are already kind of transferring kind of missile-related technology, but they're kind of denying the accusations that it is not about nuclear capability. But the second perspective is that by saying that North Korea is already a nuclear state, it tries to wedge the trilateral cooperation between U.S., South Korea, and Japan, because this trilateral cooperation has been created to deter and as well as to denuclearize North Korea. So the fundamental reason they kind of coalesce together at this moment is about North Korea. But by saying that North Korea is already a nuclear state, they don't have to lose their ground for cooperations and wedge the cooperations for the future. So that's one of the kind of strategic reasons they say that North Korea is already a nuclear state.
If the first reason you mentioned is the main reason behind his remark, then it must be really disappointing to, Kim Jong-un, the supreme leader of North Korea.
Right.
I see. Seoul-Moscow relations hit a stumbling block as Putin was on his course to re-election. Russia said that it arrested a South Korean missionary on charges of spying earlier this year. It is very unusual for Russia to detain a South Korean national for espionage and reveal it 2 months after it happened. So, Professor Lee, what political intention is behind this move?
Again, so this kind of like a political issue should be analyzed from the big pictures. So as I mentioned, Moscow, Seoul, the relationship is strained, and on the other side, Moscow and Pyongyang's relationship is actually going to be more robust. Also, there's a tentative Moscow and Pyongyang summit, and as a present, definitely, Putin needs a gift to give Kim Jong-un, and to actually give a more strong sign that we are like taking a distance from Seoul, and we will want to maintain a close relationship with Pyongyang. So from this big pictures, from this structural kind of dynamic, we have to analyze these political issues.
Seoul-Moscow ties have been strained since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia even designated South Korea as an unfriendly nation after Seoul joined international sanctions against Russia. Now their relations can be affected by more unfavorable factors, like closer military cooperation between Russia and North Korea and the detention of a South Korean missionary. So in the fifth term of Putin, what is the prospect for Seoul-Moscow relations? Can it even go down further?
I believe so, because ever since early 2000, I think Russia-South Korea relations has not been that good. There was not that many opportunities to be engaged in the first place. Even though we have some kind of Eurasia initiative or kind of northern politics under the Moon administrations, there was not that much engagement in the first place from South Korea side. And not only because of North Korea, but also because we don't have that much interest in engaging Russia, except for the economic kind of interest. But at the same time, Russia's primary interest in this region is maintain stability in the Korean Peninsula and deny the presence of United States military forces. So if United States elections goes to Biden, then the current relationship will stay the same or even worse. But if there is a Republican president who wins the elections, then it becomes much worse for South Korea, I think, because of this offshore balancing kind of strategy of the United States. And North Korea become more emboldened because of this tie with Russia. And Russia, as Professor Lee repeatedly mentions, it has more wiggle room to whatever he wants to do. So overall, this relationship between South Korea and Russia have more challenges than before.
But South Korea, because of the disagreement and opposition from Moscow, has not provided weapons of mass destruction to Ukraine, although Ukrainian government repeatedly demanded the supply of those weapons from South Korea. So
but at the
South Korea has not crossed the red line.
But at the same time, we joined AP4, Asia Pacific 4, to help Ukraine, even though it was a reconstruction project and other financial support. But we are sided with Ukraine in the first place.
I see.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, the US-ROC relationship is really important, and we are a member of the Democratic bloc.
Right.
And so we have to do something. But the point is how? How can we protect our national interest? Not really like worsen the relationship with Moscow, but at the same time, keep the relationship with the Western countries, but also like control and manage to the worst case scenarios. So we have to think about a really credible, clever signaling strategies that can both satisfy Washington and Moscow.
Okay, I see. President Putin will stay in power with a continuous sense of mission to make Russia great. South Korea should pay attention to what 6 more years of Putin's rule will mean and focus its diplomacy on addressing possible repercussions. Let's change the subject. Lately, this is said to be as popular as K-pop and K-drama in international markets. Before moving on to the next part, please take a look at the video first.
The industry rakes in over $1.44 billion in sales. Its exports amount to about $110 million. In terms of sales, 4 of the world's top 5 companies are Korean. These are the performance of Korean webtoons, which are hugely popular among global fans. Webtoon, a portmanteau of the words web and cartoon, originated in Korea in 1999. Webtoon now refers to all types of online comics worldwide. In France, one of the world's major comics markets, Naver recently won a share of 51%. The attitude toward webtoons has changed in France, where digital comics were once considered strange. The French-based Unique Heritage Media Group launched the app Webtoon, a subscription service providing vertically scrolling digital versions of Disney comics. It is also meaningful that Korean platforms Kakao and Naver are gaining dominance in Japan, which is a traditional lead player in the industry with manga. Japan is the largest importer of Korean webtoons, followed by Chinese-speaking countries, North America, and Southeast Asian countries. Kakao Piccoma offers a variety of options to readers by providing both original webtoons and ebook versions of Japanese popular manga. Riding on this popularity in Japan, Naver and Kakao are eyeing the US market as the next target. In the US, Naver has expanded its business through a strategy of having over 120,000 local writers register on an amateur creative platform. Kakao released webtoons and web novels in North America in 2022. Its core strategy is to change Korean webtoons and web novels in a way to satisfy the tastes of local readers. As Korean drama adaptations based on webtoons make a hit on OTT services, an increasing number of fans are going for original webtoons. Popular webtoons are thought to have already been tested and proven in the online market, so they are frequently adapted and dramatized for the small screen overseas. Japan's major publishing companies as well as big technology companies are jumping on the global webtoon craze, pioneered by Korean companies. Japanese publishing company Kodansha launched a K-manga platform in the US last year and entered the global webtoon market. 10 years have passed since Korean webtoons advanced into international markets. How long will webtoons enjoy its skyrocketing popularity?
It is not an overstatement that Korean webtoon services are dominating the global market. We are going to talk with an expert about why Korean webtoons are appealing to global audiences. We have Lee Jae-min, Director of the Comics Culture Research Institute. 소장님, 한국이 최초로 만든 웹 기반의 만화 플랫폼 웹툰이 일본, 미국 등 글로벌 성공을 거두고 있는 이유, 그리고 웹툰만의 강점이 무엇인지요?
네, 일단 한국 웹툰의 경우에는 스마트폰으로 진출해서 쉽게 볼 수 있다는 점이 가장 크게 작용했던 것 같아요. 일본에서도 서점에서 20대, 30대 여성이 만화책을 집어드는 행위 자체가 약간 부담스러웠던 거죠. 근데 스마트폰은 내 개인적으로 볼 수 있는 기기니까 스마트폰이라는 기기가 개인적인 감상을 줄 수 있는 도구로 활용이 되면서 다른 장르들 그리고 우리가 독자인지 몰랐던 독자들까지 발견하게 됐고 그게 그 중심에 웹툰이 있었다라고 볼 수 있을 것 같습니다. 그리고 더 추가하자면 일단 기존의 출판만 하는 흑백이잖아요. 컬러를 통해서 전해지는 웹툰은 보는 그 자체로 빛을 발산하다 보니까 거기서 느껴지는 아름다움을 직관적으로 알기가 쉽습니다. 그러다 보니까 독자들이 쉽고 빠르게 읽을 수 있는 데다가 미국에서도 네이버 웹툰 같은 경우에 75%의 이용자가 10대에서 20대 초반 정도의 젊은 세대다라는 보고들이 있어요. 이런 젊은 세대들이 웹툰의 인기를 주도하고 있고 그게 지금 세계 시장에 주목하고 있는 이유다라고 볼 수 있을 것 같습니다.
예, 소장님 말씀 감사합니다. In my childhood, there was no such a thing called the internet. There was no webtoon. The comics cartoons are only available on papers or on TV. So, professors, what is your favorite webtoon?
Maybe we're in the same generations.
Thank
I
you.
used to usually read comic books rather than webtoons in the internet. So, but these days I watch a lot of Korean dramas based on webtoons such as Taxi Driver or Kingdom, or a long time ago there was a Full House.
Okay,
So
alright.
that must be my experience, I think.
See. Right. Professor Lee?
So yeah, I'm also a big fan of comic books. I think we're in the same generations, I believe so.
Good to hear
And
that.
I really enjoyed like reading Slam Dunk, the comic books. That was my favorite one.
I see.
So Dr. Bong, are you a webtoon fan as well?
I'm not a big fan, but I enjoy watching this one. 지금 우리 학교는 recently in our school. I mean, I'm hooked on these zombies, right? You know the main difference between Korean zombies and Western zombies?
I have no idea.
Korean zombies are fast. They splint,
okay.
right? American zombies are slow, slower than human, right? That's the difference that I got from watching this webtoon.
I see.
It's good to know.
We have already witnessed the global rise and boom of Korean cultural contents, which is called Hallyu, Korean wave. So, do you think these Korean webtoon will reach the same pedigree as the Korean dramas and Korean, songs in the future? What do you think?
This webtoon, it has a very narrow range of audiences. The main audiences are teenagers and over 20 years. They have limitations in expanding influence in the global stage, as we have observed in the K-drama or movies, I think.
What do you think, Dr. Lee?
So when you think about the selling points about the Korean movies and dramas, for example, Parasites, for example.
Right.
So the key concepts is, I would say, it's the universalism, the humanity.
Right.
So all the Korean contents have this universal values that can appeal to everyone, the global audiences. So if the Korean K-comics, the industry will be expanded, will have more like global influence, I would say the selling point should be in telling the same contents, the universal humanitarian values. So if they have a really narrow-minded topic that can only appeal to certain generations, certain groups, or certain countries, but if they have like have a more universal like stories that can reach to everyone.
I see. Good. According to a study, the volume of the global webtoon market will amount to over 56 billion US dollars. With this growth, many people around the world, including South Korea, aspire to become webtoonists. Korean companies are discovering new great webtoon artists abroad and publish their works in local markets to make huge profit. Fat paychecks are important to keep these artists, but working conditions and treatment of webtoon writers are also important. It's about respect. Young artists are the mainstay of the webtoon industry, but they often face disadvantages and unfair situations. So, what are the main issues here, and what would be the solutions to the challenges?
Well, as other kind of publication market experiences, I think major issue would be copyright. This is internet-based cartoon, so it is easily ignore the value of copyrights who actually make and publish and disseminate these products. So it seems like copyrights and awareness about the importance of this copyright would be important, but at the same time, more important thing is how they make a fair contract in the first place.
Yeah.
There are a number of companies who actually make these deals, but there is no standardized way of making a contract with artists. So I think this could be kind of government can intervene actually to make a kind of standardized template for contract or copyrights law. That could be a kind of one way to institutionalize this problem.
Professor Lee?
So I absolutely agree with Professor Strong's opinion. So the key point is actually making a favorable and understandable income structures. So it's definitely makes sense. We are living in a capitalistic society. So if the person have a high performance, she or he should be compensated in a decent way. And if someone has like a bad performance, then we have to treat it a bit differently. But having this kind of structuralized like income systems legalized by the law or like regulations really important. So there's recently the Seoul metropolitan city actually think about this, how to make a really favorable and fair income structures that can satisfy not only the main director or also the assistant directors.
Right, good. So there are ways, right?
Sure.
Young people in Korea grew up with comics and animated TV series, and many of them once dreamed of becoming comics creators or cartoonists. Young Korean webtoon artists are attracting global readers in the digital world. Let's hope that Korean webtoons will continue to thrive and make new history. Professor Jung and Professor Lee, thank you so much for joining us and share your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is all we have for you today. We'll be back next week with more interesting latest issues. Thanks for watching and goodbye.